And now we're going to take a look back in history. Now, most of us familiar with Oskar Schindler, the German industrialist credited with saving the lives of 1,200 Jews during the Holocaust. Schindler, of course, was immortalized in the 1993 Oscar-winning movie Schindler's List, directed by Steven Spielberg, with Liam Neeson in that leading role. But there was another lesser-known hero of the Holocaust, if you will, whose story is now being told in a new documentary, A Voice Among the Silent, the legacy of James G. MacDonald. MacDonald, a U.S. diplomat, was one of the first Americans to meet with Hitler in person in 1933. And alarmed by Hitler's threats, MacDonald, he warned world leaders, including President Franklin Roosevelt, of the imminent threat that he foresaw. In the end, the son of a Catholic immigrant ended up rescuing thousands of Jewish refugees from the Nazis. MacDonald's story may have gone untold had his detailed diaries not been discovered in 2003 and later published by Indiana University Press. Now, in a 53-minute documentary, director Shuli Eshel recounts MacDonald's heroic efforts. The film includes rare period footage and exclusive interviews with MacDonald's family, editors of his diaries, and historians in the U.S. and Israel. The documentary had its world premiere in New York over the weekend and is showing this evening at 7:30 at the Bowtie Cinemas in Great Neck, Long Island. The film will also have 2 additional showings in Illinois next month. Now, here to talk more about the film is the director, Shuli Eshel, and she's kind enough to spend a few minutes with us. Amazing story. You know, I'm curious, even for historians who followed this, did people realize how prominent a role he had in both obviously alerting the then President Roosevelt, but also, moreover, in future positions he held down the line, how much of an important figure he was in so many lives?
Well, I believe that James MacDonald was very important, but only historian and very few people knew of his existence. He was like a footnote in history, or if you like, fell in between the cracks. But with the discovery of his diaries, people understood the importance of what he had meticulously wrote in his diaries and how much he did from the moment he met Hitler in 1933 until he became the U.S. ambassador to Israel. It's a long road.
And if we could, I want to play the clip. And again, this is the voice you're here is his daughter, a retelling about that fateful meeting in 1933, the face-to-face meeting that Mr. MacDonald had with Adolf Hitler.
My father, not only from talking to Hitler then, but talking to various Nazis, really came away from his 4-week visit with the feeling that there was no future for Jews in Germany.
Shuli, did he have any idea, MacDonald, just how much of a genocidal lunatic that Hitler was and how serious maybe some of the back chatter was about Hitler's ambitions? Obviously, he walked away from their meeting believing that this guy was serious about his intentions.
I think he was shocked by Hitler's threat of killing, annihilating the Jews. And in fact, it changed his whole life. He left the Foreign Policy Association in New York. He became the League of Nations High Commissioner for Refugees from Germany. And he alerted world leaders, like you said before. He met with President Franklin Roosevelt numerous times. He met with the Pope 4 times. He met with leaders all over the world, trying to alert him that there was a dictator here that was really dangerous to the whole democratic structure of society. You
mentioned some of his various positions. I want to get into in a second, but this is also another clip from your documentary about the War Refugee Board. And I think maybe not a lot of people realize, but this board, their intentions were much broader, but at least they got a camp set up in, of all places, New York. Take a look.
The War Refugee Board urged President Roosevelt to establish shelters in the United States. MacDonald wrote to Roosevelt in the name of the advisory committee endorsing the refugee shelter plan.
And Shuli, I think people be surprised, I certainly was, Oswego, New York. Talk about how that happened and who eventually emigrated there and what the camp provided.
Right, well, the clip that you just showed comes a little later. In 1938, MacDonald became the chair of President Roosevelt's advisory committee, which he set up in 1938. And as the war broke out, Second World War broke out, and as notices were coming out from the Treasury Department that MacDonald was trying to do everything he could, but Roosevelt was not really paying any attention, they decided to create the Refugee Board. And he immediately endorsed that, and they set up a camp in Oswego, New York. And that was unfortunately, sadly, the only camp that they set up of Jewish refugees from Italy, and there were mainly women and children in that camp.
He made it his life's work, really, that meeting in Hitler that we showed earlier, and then his work both as on the advisory committee, and then he became the first ambassador to Israel. Did anyone try to quantify how many lives he, not alone obviously, but he may have saved? We talked about Oskar Schindler, and I think people's introduction in the early 90s, that movie, people realized he saved more than 1,000 people. The same could be said, if not even to a multiple of that, with Mr. MacDonald.
Right. I think that James MacDonald saved about 2,000 people on the eve of the Holocaust, and it was with variant frei visas for artists from Paris, and all over with the Kwanzaa, the ship. There were 97 refugees that he saved, and so forth and so forth.
In the film, there's a clip which shows then President Harry Truman recognizing the good works, but there's also a clip that I like to play now about the credo of James MacDonald. Take a listen.
To me, the threat of Jewish extermination in Germany was a threat also to all Christians, indeed to all freedom of religion and all democratic ideals and principles. The threat to Jews was not only a hideous wrong, but also created a world problem of overwhelming significance.
I think it's also important to recognize when we hear this, this is from Scotch Catholic. He mentions it in there as well here. He even used the term, if we went even a little further, that he is one of those Aryan faces, if you will. But it was his credo about, this wasn't just about Jews, this was about humanity.
Right. His cause was much bigger. He was fighting for freedom, for justice, for equal treatments of all human beings. So I think the credo really sums up who this person was and his belief. And the fact that President Truman appointed him the first U.S. ambassador to Israel is pivotal, because he really helped and laid down the foundation of the relationship between America and Israel, which till today is much, much better than it would have been had he not been in that position.
And there's a timeliness about this, not just as a reminder of history or to give much more recognition that was due to really a footnote of history, but we see refugee crisis all across the globe right now. And when you look at this, you can't help but thinking what's going on in different places with different displaced populations.
That's one of the main reasons I made this documentary, because I think it's relevant today as it was 80 years ago. I mean, MacDonald is a model for speaking up when he saw evil, for alerting world leaders, for doing everything he could to save the fleeing refugees. As you said today, does the United States, was it okay that the United States intervened in Rwanda, in Darfur, and all the refugees now in Syria and so forth? So it's very relevant, and I'm hoping that that film will be seen widely and that it will influence and people could learn from MacDonald of what to do when you're confronted with a dictator and a threat.
And again, the film, A Voice Among the Silent. And if you're on Long Island tonight, strongly recommend you check it out. It's going to be playing at 7:30 in Great Neck at the Bowtie Cinemas, and the doors open at 7 p.m.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure, absolutely. There
is a panel discussion following the film with the daughter of MacDonald, Barbara MacDonald Stewart, and the historian Dr. Raphael Madoff. They're joining me on following the screening of the film for a panel discussion, and I think it's very significant that his daughter came in all the way from Washington, D.C. and is participating in this premiere in Long Island, Great Neck, New York.
Shuli, I appreciate a few minutes, and best of luck with the documentary.
Thank you.
We'll be right back on RFL. Stay with us.